Hello students, welcome to the new lecture of Engineering Chemistry course. As always, before starting the today's class, just a quick recap of the previous class. We are studying the unit 3rd, corrosion and its control, and in previous class we have started with the electrochemical theory of corrosion. We know that the explanation of the corrosion is given by three types of theories: acid attack theory, chemical attack theory and the electrochemical theory. Out of these three theories, the electrochemical theory of corrosion, which is also known as the wet corrosion, is the most widely accepted theory for explanation of the corrosion. And we know in the last class we have learned that in two conditions metal undergoes corrosion. What are these two conditions? First, when conducting liquid, when metal surface is in contact with any type of conducting liquid. Or second condition is when two dissimilar metals are in contact with each other and are also immersed in the electrolyte solution. So in either of the case, the metal undergoes corrosion because in both of the cases, the metal surface becomes chemically non-uniform, due to which anodic and cathodic areas are developed at the metal surface, and in presence of any electrolyte solution, the metal surface is now behaving like a small galvanic cell. Therefore, in presence of moisture, the metal surface undergoes in corrosion by electrochemical reaction. That is why it is called the electrochemical corrosion. In detail, the mechanism of the electrochemical corrosion or the wet corrosion we have discussed in our previous class. So let us begin with today's lecture. Today we are going to start the new topic, types of corrosion, in which three types of corrosion we will going to discuss in our today's class, that is galvanic corrosion, differential aeration corrosion, or we can call it as concentration cell corrosion, and third one is the pitting corrosion. So in today's class these three types of corrosion we will going to discuss. So let us begin. The types of corrosion. The corrosion may vary. The different types, the important types or the main types of the corrosion are galvanic corrosion, differential aeration or concentration cell corrosion, pitting corrosion, stress corrosion, crevice corrosion, erosion corrosion, soil corrosion, microbiological corrosion, waterline corrosion and intergranular corrosion. So all are the types of the corrosion. Okay, among all these types of corrosion, we will focus in today's lecture on these three types of the corrosion: galvanic corrosion, differential aeration corrosion and the pitting corrosion. So let us begin with the galvanic corrosion. Basically, this type of corrosion takes place in such a condition when two dissimilar metals, that means two different metals, are in contact with each other and there is some electrolyte solution also present. So what is the necessary condition in which galvanic corrosion takes place is the contact of two dissimilar metals with each other and the electrolyte solution is also present at the surface, or the metals are dipped into the electrolyte solution. That means both the metal are in contact with each other and at the same time they are in contact with the electrolyte solution also. So in such type of condition, the metal structure is behaving like as a small galvanic cell. So in such condition, the metal which is more electropositive, that means the metal which is having the lower electrode potential, that metal behave as the anode. Why it behave as the anode? Because the metal which is having the lower electrode potential can oxidize easily. So oxidation takes place easily at this part. That's why it is behaving as the anodic part. While the metal with higher electrode potential will behave as the cathode. So when two dissimilar metals are there, then the metal which is more electropositive, that means whose oxidation is easy, that metal behaves as anode, while the other metal which have the higher electrode potential is behaving as the cathode. So in such a condition, when two dissimilar metals are in contact with each other, the more electropositive metal will behave as the anode, while less electropositive metal behave as the cathode. So in this case, the zinc and copper, two metals are in contact with each other. This is the zinc part and this is the copper part. So in such case, the more electropositive metal is the zinc. So the zinc behave as the anode, while the less electropositive metal is the copper. So copper behave as the cathode in this case. Suppose both these metals are in contact with the electrolyte solution also. So this is the electrolyte solution. So in such case, one metal which is the more electropositive metal behave as the anode. So zinc behave as the anode while copper behave as the cathode. And electrolyte solution is also present at the surface of the metal. That's why a small galvanic cell setup takes place in which zinc behave as anode, copper behave as the cathode. So we know that the anode, what reaction taking place? At the anode, oxidation takes place. So oxidation means zinc undergoes in oxidation and converted into zinc plus 2 ions, and electrons are released at anode. So at here, zinc part oxidation takes place and zinc converted into zinc ion, and zinc ion goes into the solution. So from the zinc rod, zinc ion goes into the solution and electrons are released. The electrons which are released at anode flows towards the cathode. So now electrons are moving towards the cathode here. So at the anode, what reaction takes place? At the anode, oxidation takes place in which zinc converted into zinc plus 2 and the electrons are released. The electrons which are released at the anodic part get consumed on the cathode, and we know through the electrochemical theory that cathodic reaction is the environmental conditions dependent reaction. That means in acidic environment, at the cathode hydrogen evolution takes place, while in the basic or the neutral environment, at the cathode absorption of oxygen takes place and hydroxyl ion will be generated at the cathode. So anodic reaction is the same, that is the oxidation reaction, and since here zinc is the anode, so oxidation of which metal takes place here? Oxidation of zinc will takes place here. So slowly this zinc rod becomes thin. Why becomes thin? Because zinc ion goes into the solution from this zinc rod. So zinc ion comes into the solution and zinc rod become thinner, and the electrons released at the anode get consumed on the cathode. Consumption of electrons at cathode depends upon the medium. If acidic medium is there, then hydrogen gas is evolved at the cathode. At here, hydrogen gas is evolved, while if medium is neutral or basic, then oxygen gas is absorbed on the cathode, and this result in the formation of the OH minus. We have discussed in our previous class in detail this reactions, so I am not repeating here again, but we know that if neutral or basic medium generates the OH minus ion, which finally combines with the Zn plus 2, and zinc hydroxide rust is formed near the cathode. Okay, so the main reason for this type of corrosion is what? This is the main reason. There is the main reason is that two dissimilar metals are in contact with each other. First. Second, if we want to eliminate this type key of, not exactly the eliminate, if we want to minimize the galvanic corrosion, what we can do? So to avoid the galvanic corrosion, we can do following things. First, coupling metal close to the electrochemical series. What it means? It means, suppose we are taking here the example of zinc and copper. The difference between these two metals in the electrochemical series is as high, then the tendency of the zinc to oxidize into zinc plus 2 ion becomes high. That means if we want to minimize this reaction, then what we have to do, we have to choose the second metal here, such type of second metal which is closer to the zinc in the electrochemical series. That means the difference in electrode potential of both the combining metal 1 and metal 2, both the combining metal will be as less as possible, because as the difference between the electrode potential of these two metal is less, then tendency to oxidize the anodic metal becomes less. Therefore, we must select such two metals which are closer in the electrochemical series to avoid the galvanic corrosion. If it is not possible, then what other thing we can do? We can fix the insulating material between these two metals to avoid the direct contact between these two metals. Or third, what we can do? We can use the metal in such a way that larger anodic area will be there. That means the metal which behave as the anode, it must be larger in size, while the metal which behave as the cathode must be smaller in the size. We know from our previous lecture that as the anodic area is small, the rate of corrosion will be higher. So if we want to minimize the rate of corrosion, that means we should increase the size of the anodic part. Therefore, by these three measures we can control the galvanic corrosion. The best example of the galvanic corrosion is the steel screws in the brass marine. Okay, brass marine hardware. So steel screws are the one metal, second metal is the brass, and since it is the marine hardware, that means there will be the electrolyte solution also. Sea water, ocean water is the electrolyte solution. So in such type of condition, the galvanic corrosion may takes place. Second type of example is the steel pipes which are connected to the copper plumbing. So two metals are there, steel and the copper, and since these are the pipes, so some solution water will be in there. So the electrolyte solution are also present. So this is also the case of the galvanic corrosion. I hope it is clear to all of you now what is the galvanic corrosion. Now, second type of corrosion is the differential aeration corrosion or the concentration cell corrosion. This type of corrosion takes place when a metal is in contact with the varying concentration of conducting liquid. That means here a single metal is in contact with the varying concentration of conducting liquid. That means a single metal is there, but the electrolyte present in contact with the metal surface is in different concentration at the different parts of the metal. That means at the some part the concentration of the electrolyte is higher, while at the some part the concentration of the electrolyte is lower. So due to the variation of the concentration in these two parts, the metal surface behave as a chemically non-uniform surface, and anodic and cathodic areas are formed onto the metal surface, which results in the corrosion, and this type of corrosion is called concentration cell corrosion. If the concentration of air is different at the different metallic part, then this corrosion is called as the differential aeration corrosion. So what we have concluded, that when a single metal is in contact with the varying concentration of the liquid or the air, if the metal is in contact with the varying concentration of a electrolyte solution, then it is called the concentration cell corrosion. While metal is in contact with the different air concentration, then it is called the differential aeration corrosion. So what happens when the metal surface is in contact with the different concentration of the liquid or the air? In such case, due to this difference in the concentration of a liquid or the air, the metal surface becomes chemically non-uniform, due to which anodic and cathodic area are formed and corrosion takes place. So this is called the concentration cell corrosion or the differential aeration corrosion. We are taking here the example of the differential aeration corrosion. Okay, suppose the metal rod is dipped in an electrolyte. The portion dipped in the electrolyte solution, this portion where electrolyte solution is there, in this portion oxygen concentration is less, while the portion of the rod which is above this liquid part, it is the part where oxygen concentration or the air concentration is high. So what is case here is, here the zinc rod or the metal rod is in contact with the different concentration of the oxygen. Clear? This is the more oxygenated part and this is the less oxygenated part. Red one is the less oxygenated part and blue one is the more oxygenated part. Always remember that the part which is in contact with the less oxygen, that means poor oxygenated part, will always behave as the anode. Where the oxygen concentration is less, that part of metal will always behave as the anode, while the more oxygenated part will always behave as the cathode. So here what condition develops? Due to the different concentration of the oxygen or air, the metal surface becomes chemically non-uniform. One is the more oxygenated part and second one is the less oxygenated part. The less oxygenated part will behave as the anode, while the more oxygenated part of the metal surface will behave as the cathode. So due to varying concentration of oxygen, the metal surface becomes chemically non-uniform and anodic and cathodic areas are formed at the metal surface. Poor oxygenated part behave as the anode, while more oxygenated part behave as the cathode. Clear? So a single metal is in contact with the different concentration of oxygen. The metal surface which is less oxygenated behave as the anode, while metal part which is in higher oxygen concentration behave as the cathode. Now due to the formation of anodic and cathodic area, corrosion starts. At the anodic part, oxidation takes place, and oxidation is the zinc undergoes in oxidation and converted into zinc plus 2 ions plus 2 electrons. So at here oxidation of metal takes place and slowly zinc ions comes to the solution through the rod due to the oxidation reaction and electrons are released. The electrons which are released at the anodic part now flows towards the cathodic part, and the cathodic area are those where high oxygen concentration is there. So at the cathodic part, which reaction is taking place? At the cathodic part, the oxygen gains these electrons in presence of moisture and generates the hydroxyl ions. So, at the anode, zinc plus 2 ions are formed, while at the cathode, hydroxyl ions are formed. Here, hydroxyl ions are formed, while at the anodic part, zinc plus 2 ions are formed. So, ultimately, both these ions combines and forms the zinc hydroxide as a corrosion product. So, near the cathode, somewhat here, zinc hydroxide corrosion product is formed. So this is the case where due to the different concentration of oxygen, corrosion of the metal rod takes place. You must remember that the less oxygenated part will behave always as the anode and oxidation takes place at anodic part, while the more oxygenated part will always behave as the cathode and the cathode reduction takes place. Since this is the oxygen corrosion or the differential aeration corrosion, so at the cathode always reaction will be the absorption of oxygen and generation of the hydroxyl ions. These ions will finally combine with these zinc ions and forms the corrosion product zinc hydroxide. Clear? So, this type of corrosion may be accelerated in apparently inaccessible places like cracks and crevices. Why? Because in these places oxygen approach is less. That means these places are oxygen deficient places or oxygen deficient areas. So these areas of the metal surface behave as the anode and remaining metal surface behave as the cathode. Therefore, corrosion takes place. Similarly, this type of corrosion accelerated under accumulation of dirt, dust and the sand particles, because the surface which is covered by the impurities is the less oxygenated now. So, these surface behave as the anode and the other surfaces of the metal will behave as the cathode. So, corrosion starts, and this type of corrosion is the differential aeration corrosion. Okay. Now, coming towards the third type of corrosion, that is the pitting corrosion. It is somewhat similar to the differential aeration corrosion, but the main difference between these two is that this is the highly non-uniform corrosion and it is the highly localized corrosion. That means due to this type of corrosion, highly localized attack on the metal surface takes place. So this is the highly localized and the non-uniform corrosion. Basically, this type of corrosion occurs due to the localized accelerated attack, which results in the formation of the pits or the cavities or pinholes in the metal. So pitting is the result of breakdown or cracking of the protective film on a metal at specific points, at the some points only. Pitting may be caused by any of the following reasons. What are these reasons? First is the non-homogeneous external environment. That means a single metal is in contact with the non-homogeneous environment. That means somewhere at the metal surface some reagent, chemicals or electrolyte solution present, and somewhere it is not present. So chemically non-uniform environment, that means metal is active at the some part and less active at the another part. So this chemical non-uniform environment causes the localized corrosion, which is the pitting corrosion, because it results in the formation of pits at the metal surface. That's why it is called the pitting corrosion. Okay. So in such type of corrosion, let us take an example where the metal surface this is the metal surface. In this metal surface, suppose at this some point only a small crack in the oxide layer is there. So if in such case, when some crack is there in the oxide layer of the metal surface, so the area which is the present in the crack area is the less oxygenated area, and this less oxygenated area behave as the anode, while other remaining large area will behave as the cathode. So the attack, that means corrosion, takes place at this small area only, and due to this attack, this corrosion takes place at this local point. That's why it is called the localized attack, and it results in the formation of the deep pit in the metal surface. Reaction will be the same. At the anodic part, oxidation of iron takes place and iron undergoes Fe+2 and electrons, while these electrons are now moved towards the cathodic part. At the cathodic part, since the cathodic part is the more oxygenated part, so at the cathode, formation of the hydroxyl ion takes place. Ultimately, these hydroxyl ions combine with the Fe+2 ions and formation of iron rust takes place at the near the cathode. So finally iron rust is formed here near the cathode and corrosion product is formed. But remember that this is the localized attack. That means this corrosion is continuous beneath the metal surface. Iron rust is formed at the surface of the metal, but slowly this pit becomes more deeper due to the localized attack. That's why it is called the pitting corrosion. Remember, corrosion takes place only at the less oxygenated part because it behaves as the anode, and beneath the metal surface this pit becomes deeper and deeper due to the localized attack. So mechanism will be the same as we discussed in the differential aeration corrosion. Less oxygenated part is the anode, more oxygenated part is the cathode. At the anode, reaction is the same. At the cathode, reaction is the same. That means hydroxyl ion generation. Corrosion product is the same, iron hydroxide and ultimately Fe3O4. But what is the difference between these two? The difference is this type of corrosion results in the formation of pits and cavities in the metal surface, and this is the localized attack. That means in case of the differential aeration corrosion of the whole metal takes place at generally some points, while in case of the pitting corrosion, only localized attack. Due to the localized attack, only at the some places pits formation takes place. That's why it is called the non-uniform corrosion. That means complete metal surface does not undergoes into the corrosion. Only at the some area due to the localized attack pits formation takes place. That is why it is called the pitting corrosion or the localized corrosion. So now it is time to the revision. What we have learned today? Today we have learned about the three important types of corrosion: galvanic corrosion, differential aeration or concentration cell corrosion, and pitting corrosion. Galvanic and concentration cell corrosion are the uniform corrosion, while pitting corrosion is the non-uniform corrosion, occurs due to the localized attack. So this is the main difference in these three. Now time for the learning check. We are here having the two set A and set 2. These are the metallic structure. Set A is having two structure A and B. Okay. By seeing both these structures, you have to tell me that among these structure A and B, among these structure, which structure undergoes corrosion first, A or B? Which one? And if it undergoes in corrosion, then which type of corrosion it will be? In set A, which figure, which metal article undergoes in corrosion first and which type of corrosion it will be? Similarly, in set 2, figure A and figure B, which structure will undergo corrosion first and which type of corrosion it will be? Okay, I hope you understood the question. We have two set of the metallic structures here, set A and set 1 and set 2. You have to tell me by seeing these figures that which structure undergoes in corrosion first, structure A or structure B, which one, and which type of corrosion it will be. Similarly, in set 2, which structure undergoes corrosion first and which type of corrosion it will be. So think for this. Carefully see the example figures here. Think for this question, and we will discuss its answer in detail in our next live class, which will be held tomorrow. Till then, take good care of yourself and keep enjoy e-learning at home. Thank you.